This book is about journalist Willard Kiplinger, who published a newsletter called the Kiplinger Washington Letter, and who became an influential advisor during the New Deal. He was an old-school reporter who covered economics for the Associated Press during Woodrow Wilson's administration. By 1923, he had left the AP and launched the Kiplinger Washington Letter, which provided economic, business, and political forecasts. It is one of the most influential newsletters ever published. Here is Kiplinger's personal scrapbook. It contains dozens of articles about his speeches and economic forecasts. His reporting and insights helped make him a national name by the 1930s. His economic and political forecasts became newsworthy in and of themselves. While he published the newsletter, Kiplinger continued freelance writing. He wrote for the New York Times, Scribner's, Nation's Business, and many other publications. This is a 1930 feature story about utility regulation in the Sunday New York Times. During the Great Depression, Kiplinger's influence and reach were significant. Unlike many journalists, Kiplinger would write with authority about both business and politics. Since the economy was the dominant story in the 1930s, Kiplinger was in high demand as both a writer and a speaker. One of Kiplinger's reporting methods involved constant outreach to top business and political leaders. Here is a copy of correspondence with Franklin Roosevelt while he was governor of New York. Roosevelt said he enjoyed reading the Kiplinger newsletter, especially since Kiplinger sent him a free copy. When FDR went to Washington, Kiplinger had forged a friendship with one of the most influential people in the cabinet, Raymond Moley, a Columbia University professor who formed FDR's Brains Trust. These people crafted the outlines of the New Deal. Moley was a speechwriter and a constant presence in the Oval Office during Roosevelt's first term. Moley remained an influential advisor after he left government and started up a new magazine called Today. Today later was acquired by Newsweek, and Moley remained senior editor at Newsweek until 1967. Moley and Kiplinger had an extensive exchange of letters during their lifetime. Kiplinger tutored Moley on journalism. Moley informed Kiplinger about the inner workings of the White House and the cabinet. Kiplinger had an extensive source network, from business leaders to U.S. senators. Here is Senator William McAdoo in 1933 asking Kiplinger what was happening in Washington. Kiplinger also formed a close friendship with the former Kansas governor, Alf Landon. FDR defeated Landon in a landslide in 1936, but Kiplinger and Landon continued a lifelong friendship. Another trick to Kiplinger's reporting bag was the telegram. Kiplinger often sent telegrams to friends and sources. Kiplinger's connections and insights made for loyal readers, such as this president of a small bank. In 1942, Kiplinger published a best-selling book called Washington is Like That. It was a general guide to how the new federal government worked. At one point, Kiplinger was on a nationally broadcast event to discuss business issues. This broadcast featured classical music, and during the intermission, Kiplinger spoke about the economy. Here's the early staff of the Kiplinger Washington newsletter. By this time, he was also publishing a tax and agriculture newsletter. When Kiplinger died in August 1967, his longtime friend Ray Moley wrote a tribute that was published in dozens of newspapers. Here is Willard Kiplinger's grandson, Knight Kiplinger, reviewing news coverage of his grandfather's passing. Knight Kiplinger joined the company as corporate vice president in 1983. That marked the third generation of family leadership, and Knight would take over the family business from his father, Austin Kiplinger. Knight Kiplinger allowed me broad access to his family's personal and business records. In these file cabinets are original correspondence with presidents, top business leaders, and entertainment figures throughout the 20th century. This era of family ownership ended in 2019 when the Kiplinger publications were sold to London-based Dennis Publishing, which in turn sold it to Future plc in 2021. The Kiplinger magazine and newsletters continue to be published to this day. I hope you enjoyed this overview. To learn more about Kip Kiplinger and his remarkable influence, head to Amazon.com or University of Massachusetts Press and buy a copy of The Insider, How the Kiplinger Newsletter Bridged Washington and Wall Street.